Well, hey y'all. I wanted to talk today about this idea of slowing down. Like slowing down, you know? And I remember the first time I learned about this concept of slowing down, and it came from my dad, actually, who, when we were little, he used to play this song, and it's an old song. I'm going to play some of it for you, and I think you'll understand what I mean by it being an old song. But it's called "Slow Down" by a guy named Chuck Girard, and it moves slowly. It just forces you almost uncomfortably to slow down, and I'm going to play it.
In the midst of my confusion, in the time of desperate need, when I am thinking not too clearly, a gentle voice does intercede. Slow down, slow down, be still, be still and wait.
We can keep going. You see what I mean? Slow down and be still and wait. We're not very good at that, are we? I learned that from my dad, who I think is good at that. But I didn't listen to him. I went through high school at like breakneck speed. I worked super hard. I was in all the clubs. I played the sports. I was like student body president and had all these good grades and all this stuff and killed myself, just like pushing myself. And then when I got to college, I just didn't do anything. I just stopped. Like I had friends and I hung out with people and I did stuff, but I wasn't involved in anything, and I just went for a lot of walks. I was probably really weird, and I just walked and slowed down and just took it all in and reflected and decompressed from all of that pressure. Got worse grades, and it was okay. So I slowed down. But even still, like, I look back on that time with fondness because I'm like, why can't I reclaim that? Like we're not good at it. We're not good at slowing down. And I think that's rooted in quite a few things. Number one, I think it's rooted in fear. Fear of not being enough, fear of failure, fear of disappointing people. We're afraid to mess it up, which is really a deeper problem, and that's arrogance. Like who do I think I am that it all rises or falls on me, and my ability to hold it all together, and this idea that I think I can do it all, I can handle it. And really the subtle belief of that is that I don't need God. Or even worse, I think I am God. Like I know better than God. And so I'm going to run and author my own life, my own destiny, and my own plan. And some people really just like would put up a middle finger to God very blatantly, but that's a subtle middle finger to God of I know better than you, so I'm just going to cut you out of the process. And so, I don't think, some of us, I don't think we curse God, but just that mentality is a direct rejection of him and his involvement in our lives. And so then I think that bleeds into a third thing, which is a lack of trust that he's got it, that he knows what he's doing, that he can handle it, and that it's okay if I set this down, it will be okay, And it's hard to trust that. And the real challenge to me on that is actually Jesus Christ himself. There's this story where he's healed a leper, and the leper wasn't supposed to tell anybody, and they did, and the word kind of gets out that he heals people and all that stuff. And so I'm in Luke 5, verses 15 and 16. It says, "But now even more, the report about him went abroad, and great crowds gathered to hear him and to be healed of their infirmities." So he's a healer. But he would withdraw to desolate places and pray. Jesus Christ, the healer, the God-man, accepted his human limits. He knew that in order to preserve his humanity, he wasn't human in the way that he could do everything and do it all and handle it all as a human being. And so when I look to Christ, I'm like, wow, who do I think I am? That I think I can handle it all, when Christ himself slowed down and even said, it's not my job to do this today. It's not my job, and that's okay. And I got to take a lesson from that, I got to learn from that. That is a huge challenge to me. But it's funny. Now we've been forced to slow down. We've been forced to just bring a halt to all the things that were like worrying about us. Are you bored yet? See, it's funny, that idea of being bored, I'm like, maybe it's not that we're bored, we're just unpracticed at slowing down. Maybe you're not bored, maybe you just are unpracticed at slowing down. And the funny thing is, slowing down, the world may have slowed down, but that doesn't mean that I will. That doesn't mean that you will. Like, slowing down is actually a decision that we have to make for ourselves. Like, the world may have slowed down, but we can still busy ourselves. We can still find things to do. We can still entertain ourselves and distract ourselves and run from thing to thing, or just scramble and scurry about kind of pointlessly at this point, but just out of habit. And I think slowing down is a choice that we have to make. Will I listen to the season? Will I listen to the moment and say I choose to slow down with it? And so when I'm in that place where I am willing to surrender and slow down, here's kind of what that looks like. So I start by just like closing my eyes and taking a breath, like, which just slows me down anyway. It's just an activity that is slow, and it just brings calm, slows me down. And then internally, I remember all of the things that have been true for millennia. I reflect, and I allow my imagination to go back in time, and I remember all the things that have always been true, or that haven't changed over the centuries, like photosynthesis. and the harvest and the rainfall and the harvesting of crops and the sun always rising and setting every day, and these things, these rhythms that God set in motion for millennia that are constants, and that just really puts me in my place, because it reminds me that I am but a mist in the millennia of what God has invented here, and it's very humbling. The other activity that puts me in my place is actually physically like getting on my knees or my face and recognizing like, oh, I am but dust here and need to slow my roll. But it also puts my problems in perspective, like, oh, this thing that's right in front of my face, like, probably isn't gonna matter when I'm 50, no offense, 50-year-olds, 70, 100, and it probably really won't matter when I'm dead, like, as morbid as that sounds, that leads me to ask the question, well, then, like, what will matter? What will matter beyond the grave, Like, what are the things that have always mattered and always will matter? And it's probably not this. Now, who I become and how I show up can be attached to those things, but this actual, like, tiny little problem, it's not that I shouldn't feel the emotions around problems. Like, problems are real, and I don't want to, ignore them or pretend that that's not a thing or just stuff down my emotions by any means. But attaching myself to the larger narrative gives me perspective, and it helps me put my very real emotions into a timeline. And I also remember who I'm talking to, who I'm engaging with. Like, if I have a relationship with the God of the universe, I have a relationship with the God of the universe. Like, that's crazy. He's the inventor, the architect. He's the one who holds it all in his hands, who were it not for his sustaining power, like, our molecules and atoms would explode into atomic bombs that just, like, suck the life out of each other. I don't even know if that's real, but there's a sustaining force here. And he's knowable, and that blows my mind, and that really puts me in my place of, like, oh, like, this is the God who, when he spoke to Moses in a burning bush, Moses took his shoes off. Like, we're dealing with something and someone who is no respecter of my frame of reference for time. Like, he invented time, and here I am bustling about my day like, God, will you please get on my timetable? And he's like, no, will you get on my timetable, please? Will you just come over to my timetable? Because I know what I'm doing. It's actually a grand invitation to chill out. And it's great. And then I remember that the whole point of all of this is to make much of him and to bring him glory and honor. And that, like, if the arc of my life isn't bending toward that end, there's probably something wrong. And so if I find myself in a moment where I have slowed down and just sort of basked in who he is, I've literally done my job as a human being. Like, that is what I'm created to do, is just, like, let my whole life be this grand, whoa, oh, you're kind of awesome and amazing, and wow, I'm impressed. That's our life. That's one of the core purposes of what this book talks about. And that is a huge relief, And so I invite you to enter into the burden of the hurry to be lifted and to slow down with me.